Hello and how are you? Hey, friends. Welcome to the Shen Show. I am your host, Shenandoah Briscoe. Today is Saturday, November the 11th, 2023. Happy Veterans Day to all you out there who have served, who are now serving, and, and given your lives for our country on this Veterans Day. All right. Hey, like I said, November the 11th, 2023. Got some happy birthday shout outs. Got a slew of happy birthday shout outs. How about Jim Wallace, Netta Swan, John Schumer, Marian Davis, and Christopher W. Campbell. So, without further ado, here's birthday shout out and song for the five of you. Hey, Christopher. Hey, Marian. Hey, John. Hey, Netta. Hey, Jim. Hey, I heard it's your birthday today. Why, that's another year gone away. I hope you're enjoying your special day because, well, it's your happy birthday day today. I said, hey, Jim. Hey, Netta. Hey, John. Hey, Marion. Hey, Christopher. Hey, I heard it's your birthday today. Wow, that's another trip around the sun that you made. I hope you're enjoying your special day because, well, it's your happy birthday day today. Day today. It's your happy birthday day today. Happy birthday to the five of you and many, many more. All right. Alrighty then. How about them Chin Show fans? Can't get enough of them. Can't live without them. Here we go. We got Mary Thornhill Everingham and Marian Williams Briscoe, a.k.a. my mommy, Donna Garrison, and Richie Humarito. Plus my Pokey pals. Those are special return posts for you right now, Julie Rigot and Amanda Riddle. All right, there we have it. Those are the Shin Show shout outs. And, before we do the weather today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the poppy. The poppy is the flower that you're supposed to wear on Veterans Day. And I'm going to explain to you why and how it's supposed to be worn. Do you ever wonder why Veterans Day is on the 11th and does not change? World War I ended on the 11th month, on the 11th day, on the 11th hour. And so you asked, uh, now, I saw a man selling poppies and stopped the lady and asked if he could reposition her poppy. While doing so, he told the lady that she should wear the poppy on the right side of the red because the red represents the blood of those who gave their lives. The black represents the mourning of those who didn't have their loved ones return home. And the green leaf represents the grass and crops growing in the future prosperity after the war destroyed so much. The leaf should be positioned at 11 o'clock to represent the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month and the time that World War I formally ended. He was worried that younger generations wouldn't understand this, and his generation wouldn't be around much longer to explain it. So, we must remember these things from our current wars too. For those that do not know, the 11th day of the 11th month is Veterans Day. All right, just remember that. If you're going to wear poppy, wear it properly because it has a lot of representation to it. All right, alrighty then. Let's do the weather. All right. Here we go. Weather forecast for the St. Charles viewing area. Cold. It's what it was today. It wasn't that bad though, right there in the corner by my back door. It does well. That's where I go and what I do. I sit right there. What happened? There it is. Yeah, 55. 55 degrees Fahrenheit was today's high. But that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. I guarantee temperatures will rise again. So I went out yesterday and I got the old haircut and for my Veterans Day hair trim biannually. Biannually, I get my hair cut. Veterans Day and Memorial Day because both are uh, ouch. Both of those are discount days at Great Clips, and so therefore I go. All right. Anyway, for the remainder of the day, a few clouds passing from time to time with low temperatures of 36 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. Winds will be east to southeast at about 5 miles per hour. For tomorrow, Sunday, no, yeah, for a second I lost my eyesight. For tomorrow, Sunday, November the 12th, and mainly sunny skies with high temperatures of 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds will be south to southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Mostly clear skies overnight with low temperatures of 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds will be southwest at 4 miles per hour. Monday, November the 13th, generally sunny skies despite a few afternoon clouds. High temperatures of 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds will be out of the north at about 5 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies overnight with 37 degrees Fahrenheit, and winds will be out of the east at about 3 miles per hour. Then for Tuesday, November the 14th, sunshine and clouds mixed together. High temperatures near 65 degrees Fahrenheit with winds southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies overnight with low temperatures around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds will be south to southeast at about 6 miles per hour. Then sunshine on Wednesday, November the 15th, with high temperatures of 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds south at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies overnight, low temperatures near 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and winds will be south to southeast at about 6 miles per hour. And then for our fifth and final day of our 5-day forecast for the St. Charles viewing area, Thursday, November the 16th. A mixture of clouds and sunshine early, then becoming cloudy later in the day. High temperatures around 69 degrees Fahrenheit with winds south at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Considerable cloudiness overnight with low temperatures of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds will be south to southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. And that, my friends, is your 5-day forecast for the St. Charles viewing area. All right. I guess I'm trying to stay warm. Maybe that's why I'm wiggling and jiggling and tickling inside. Veterans Day. Most popular Veterans Day songs. Do, 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 do. Well, I'm gonna only do the one that I only know. I guess I don't know the rest of it. I mean, I guess. Ba-do-be-do-be-do. Song lyrics, God bless the USA. Just sang it the other day, but we're gonna sing it again today. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna back off of here for just a second and reach over and flip my heater on. It's not that far, so it's just got to be done. The heat in the house is turned up. Not quite as high as I like it, but it is turned up, so if tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I'd thank my lucky stars that to be living here today, because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Okay, that's it. Can't do it. Can't see. Sorry for that. Just lost my sight. All right, I think we're just going to do the Little Mermaid story, and that'll work for us, won't it? Okay, kiddos, it's time for TV Grandpa. And what we're going to say is because grandpas can get away with such a thing, jump up on the couch and jump up on the bed. Wherever it is you rest your sleepy little head, because TV Grandpa is just about to lull you off to sleep with another little bedtime story. If we can read it and make it all the way through, we're hoping to be able to do so. Far out in the sea, where the water is very deep, the Sea King ruled the undersea world. Now, in the deepest spot of the sea was his castle. The walls were made of blue coral. On the roof were shells that opened and closed when the water passed by. And, as it were, the Sea King lived with his mother and 4 daughters, each one born a year apart. Now, the youngest of the 4 princesses was a little mermaid, and she spent much of her time swimming to ships that had fallen into the bottom of the sea. The ships had held treasures from the world above. She would fill her arms and set up her collections here and there. All the while she would sing, and as she did, fish circled around to hear her. For the little mermaid's voice was the most beautiful under the sea. Now the girl knew that when they turned 15, that they could swim up to the surface for the first time. It would be a long time for that for the little mermaid, because she had to wait, as she was the youngest, and so she made her grandmother tell her all about life on land. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Now, tales about ships and towns and every bit of stories about humans that she knew. Well, soon the eldest sister turned 15, and she was the first to be allowed to rise up to the surface. And when she came back, she had many wondrous stories to tell about. And so she told about resting on soft white sand. Way above the was a deep blue sky and puffy white clouds. Later the sun set, and she said, and that the whole sky turned golden and red. She had watched the birds fly high above her, dipping and making turns in the red and gray sky. When the next sister turned 15, it was winter time, and she told of icebergs floating in the sea and shining bright. All the ships stayed far away from the icebergs, and she said, as if in fear, but the icebergs didn't seem lonely. They were like friends floating close to each other. When it was microphone off, when it was the third sister's turn, she told about moving to as close as she could to the gate of the town. She heard people calling out, horses that went clip clop down the street, and even music that she had never heard before. All of this the little mermaid heard with wonder. Wasn't fair that she had to wait the longest. At least the at last that day came when she turned 15 also. Now she could rise up over the surface and see for herself. When she came up over the water, the little mermaid was next to a large ship. On that ship, beautiful music was playing. Sailors were dancing on the deck. They were laughing and having a fine time. It must have been a party. And now and then the waves lifted up the little mermaid and she could see better. A handsome young man stepped out on the deck. When he did, 100 rockets rose in the air. The party was for him. It was his birthday, and she swam closer. The men all seemed to like that little man, and he and when he spoke, the sailors would laugh. Sometimes they patted him on the back in joy. Once, once that he made his crown fall off, and the men laughed and picked it up. "A crown," said the little mermaid. "He must be a prince." Suddenly it became very dark, and the wind picked up. The sailors started to run about on deck. They pulled down the sails. The ship dipped and swooped, and it rolled side to side and up and down on the high waves, while the lightning flashed and the thunder rumbled, and a strong rainstorm hit. The poor ship started to tip on the rough waves. It was so dark that the little mermaid could see nothing. Then lightning lit up the sky, and she saw the young prince on the deck. He seemed to be the only one still there. He was working hard to keep the ship afloat. He was throwing ropes out to his men who had jumped. But then, all at once, the waves got very high and the ship started to tip over. The prince was flung to the side of the ship and thrown overboard. Down into the sea he fell. Well, he dropped very fast. And when uh, and what was the little mermaid to do? She knew that human beings cannot live under the water, and so she drove deep and fast. She reached out and was able to grab the shirt, and then she swam up to the surface as fast as she could. Now at last she could pull out his head above the water, and there the two of them floated as the waves rose and fell. By morning the storm had passed, and yet the prince was as still as he had been all night. From far off, the little mermaid saw tops of hills, land, and she said, well, that she swam to the shore, pulling him behind her. It was not easy to pull the young man up onto the dry land, but still she did it. Was he dead? She sung a song. All of a sudden, the prince started to move. "Oh, are you all right?" she asked, and touched him on his forehead. Just then, she heard a group of girls coming over. At once, she dove into the sea and hid behind a rock. They must not see her, a mermaid. The girls found the prince, who was now awake. They called for help, and soon he was led off. The prince was uh, never knew that she had saved him. The little mermaid sank into the deep gloom, and when she went back home, her sisters wondered and wanted to know all about her trip, but she was too sad to say anything. Days went by, and then weeks. The sisters went to their grandmother for help. The old woman went to her granddaughter. Child, what is the matter? She said. Well, the little mermaid cried out, Grandmother, I will never be happy again. She told about meeting the prince and saving him, and then having to leave him behind, unless I can somehow walk on the land and what that young man and be with that young man. I will be sad for the rest of my days. My dear, said the grandmother, you know as well as I do that it is not possible for a mermaid to walk on two legs. Why, the only one who can do anything like that is the sea witch. But of course, it is much too dangerous to go to her. Well, the sea witch, before she knew it, the little mermaid was headed to the far corners of the sea where the sea witch lived. This is no problem, said the sea witch when the little mermaid told her what she needed. I fix problems much harder than this. Why, to have legs, all you need to do is to drink my potion. Then she turned to face the girl. But I don't just give it away, you understand. Oh, said the little mermaid, what then is your price? In her heart she felt a lift. So there was a way she could have two legs and be with the prince after all. Oh, not too much, said the sea witch. For one, you must give up your voice. My voice, said the little mermaid. She knew her voice is what everyone loved about her the best. You don't need it, said the sea witch. Chitter chatter was a waste of time. But know this, little pretty, that if the prince marries someone else next day, you must die, and your voice will stay with me forever. But then, again, who knows? He might choose you. The little mermaid's heart leaped, and the sea witch held out a glass with a green potion. So, she said, what are you going to do? Make up your mind. I don't have all day. Well, the little mermaid took the potion and she drank it down. At once she felt dizzy and in pain, as if a sword was being passed through her body. She spun and she jerked about and then fell. Then she awoke and was on the same dry land as when where she had rescued the prince. Lifting up her head, she could see that her dream had come true. Where her tail had been, she had two human legs. Say, miss, are you in trouble? It was no one other than the prince. She tried to say something, but no words came out of her mouth. Can you not speak? Said he, and she shook her head no. Oh, well then, let me take you to the castle. You can clean up there and get some dry clothes to wear. You can be sure the little mermaid was very happy to join the prince at the castle. At first, walking on her two legs was shaky, but soon she got the hang of it. That night, the prince showed her around the castle rooms. He would point to a portrait and tell her all about that person. And when he said something funny, they laughed together. And when the story was sad, her kind eyes told him that she was that she knew why, and she felt sad too. The next day was a royal party. The prince had not been the prince had not been not looking forward to going to it. Hours of standing with finely dressed people who talk and talk and have nothing to say. He asked the little mermaid if she might come with him, and she nodded a big yes. That day, with the little mermaid by his side, the prince felt glad. Sometimes he would make a comment in a low voice to her, and by her eyes and face he knew that she understood. After that, the prince wanted the little mermaid by his side every day. He thought he could even fall in love with her, but he still held out hope to marry the one with the lovely voice that he remembered from when he had been rescued. Of course, it could not be his wonderful new friend who was not able to talk, well, let alone sing. Well, the king called for his son one day. Son, he said, your mother and I have made a decision. It is time that you took a bride. Luckily for you, that we are already one. Pick one for you. Uh-oh. Sorry. There. Luckily for you, we picked one for you. What? Said the prince. He only wanted to marry the woman with the beautiful voice that he remembered. Who is she? A princess from a nearby land. Tonight she is coming with her parents. We will make the wedding plans. Well, the prince was crushed, and the little mermaid felt fear. She knew what would happen if the day after. Oh, if the prince did get married the day after. If the prince got married to someone else the day after that, she would die. That night, her troubles got even worse. When the little mermaid did not know was the sea witch had put her very voice into this princess, and as she was a struck up, stuck up princess who thought only of herself. And yet, when she spoke, it was the little mermaid's voice that came out, and the prince was stunned. He asked the princess to sing, and it was the little mermaid's voice that filled the room. Well, the prince could not believe his luck. At last, he could marry the woman he had longed for all this time. And when he shared his joy with the little mermaid, she tried to show that she was happy for him, but gloom filled her heart. The next morning at dawn, the little mermaid went to the sea. Her sisters worried since they had not heard from her, rose above the water to see how she was. The youngest sister let them know the trouble she was in. The prince's wedding was going to take place the very next day, and the day after that, she must die. The sisters said not to worry, that they had an idea. They told her to come back to the shore later that night. Then they drove back into the sea. That night, the little mermaid came back to the shore, as she was told to. The three sisters rose up again. Gone was their beautiful long hair, for they had cut it all off, and to give to the sea witch in exchange for a knife. With the knife, the little mermaid must kill the princess that, that very night, and then the wedding could not take place, and she could return to the sea and be with her family. She took the knife, for she knew how much they had done for her in love, but in her heart she knew she was not going to kill the princess. Well, the wedding day had arrived. The little mermaid stepped up to the wedding ship with the other guests. The wedding would take place at sunset. In the meanwhile, the three sisters had returned home. They were near. They were met with an angry father. "Where is your sister?" the Snake King shouted. "Where have you been all been?" Well, they told the father the troubles their young sister was in, and the father swam up to the wedding ship. He saw the princess, and he saw the, unknown caller. He saw the prince and the princess getting ready to marry. He knew that his daughter would die, not did not use the knife that night before. At once the Sea King rushed to see the Sea Witch. She laughed. She said, "There is only one way to save his daughter from her fate. He would just hand over his scepter to her." Well, the little mermaid could be saved with the scepter in her hand. Well, the Sea Witch would rule the underworld kingdom, and the Sea could King took a deep breath. What else could he do? And so he agreed. Well, the Sea Witch grabbed the scepter, and she laughed in glee. She rushed to the wedding ship to see her victory. While the little mermaid saw the Sea Witch rise out of the sea, she saw that with the scepter, the Sea Witch had become a huge sea monster. Tentacles were twisting out from under her body like an octopus. Well, the little mermaid knew she must protect the princess and even his new bride, and so she took out the knife. Just then, one of the Sea Witch's tentacles reached out and left the mermaid right out of the ship. "This is the end for you," crowned, crowned the sea, crowed the Sea Witch. Well, before the little mermaid knew it, she was wrapped up by the tentacles. She was spun to the very chest of the Sea Witch, and the knife she was holding, the Sea Witch's very own knife, she used it and drove it deep into the chest of the monster. The Sea Witch reeled back in pain, and the little mermaid was freed. On the ship, the guests ran around in fear. The prince shot arrows after arrow at the monster. Finally, the Sea Witch dropped down under the water. As she fell, a little mermaid's voice was let go, and it returned to her. The princess then shouted in a gruff, harsh voice, "What a lousy kingdom this is!" What a lousy kingdom this is. You can't even have a proper wedding. The prince heard the princess and knew that she was not who he thought she was. And then the little mermaid started to sing, while the prince knew that the voice he remembered belonged to the very one that he had grown to love. And the angry princess stormed off and of the wedding ship, and her family followed close behind. And when the Sea King arrived, the scepter was floating in the sea, as if it were waiting for him. With a sweep of his arms, it was his again. "Well," said the Sea King, "I see my daughter is in good hands." And with a wave of his scepter, he lifted the little mermaid back onto the ship. The prince put his arms around her. "No, no, now I I know it was you all along," said the prince. "Will you marry me?" The little mermaid had her voice back now, but with all the happiness in her heart, she could not manage to speak a word, and so she nodded yes, with a warm smile, and a wedding on board ship took place after all. The end. That was a long one. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Daily Bread portion of the program. The Daily Bread portion of the program is brought to you today by the Bible with Briscoe 2023. The Bible with Briscoe 2023 is a daily reading of the Bible to be completed within 1 year. Today's reading in the Bible with Briscoe 2023 will be Jeremiah 50 and Hebrews 8. Lucky Boots, that's today's devotion in the Daily Bread portion of the program. Today's scripture and insight will be 1 Samuel 4, 1 through 11. And so here we go. 1 Samuel 4, 1 through 11. The Philistines captured the ark. Now, the Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. The Israelites camped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines at Aphek. Now the Philistines deployed their forces to meet Israel, and as the battle spread on, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 of them on the battlefield. When the soldiers returned to camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh, so that he may go with us and save us from the hands of our enemies." And so the people sent men to Shiloh, and they brought back the ark of the covenant of the Lord Almighty. And who is enthroned? Be the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim. And Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. While the ark of the Lord's covenant came into the camp, all Israel raised such a great shout that the ground shook. And hearing the uproar, the Philistines asked, "What is all this shouting in the Hebrew camp?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid. A god has come into their camp, they said. Oh no, nothing like this has ever happened before. We're, we're doomed. What will deliver us from the hands of these mighty gods? They are the gods who struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Be strong, Philistines, be men, or you will be subject to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Be men and fight. And so the Philistines fought, and the Israelites were defeated, and every man fled to his tent. The slaughter was very great, and Israel lost 30,000 foot soldiers. The ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, dead. That was the Daily Bread part of the program. Lucky Boots. Don't know what that had to do with Lucky Boots because everybody was dead and defeated. Anyway, that's the Daily Bread portion program that was brought to you by the Bible with Briscoe 2023, a daily reading of the Bible to be completed within 1 year. So next up, I got one song for you, and it goes kind of like this. Oh, goodbye, my friends, it's time to go. I said goodbye, my friends, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must go. So, goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I said goodbye, my friends, goodbye. This here has been Shenandoah Briscoe saying hello, and how are you? Thanks for tuning into the Shen Show. And as always, you know, God loves you, and so do I. So come back and see us again tomorrow because, well, God will be here. And we hope that you are too. Please like and share.